The cabin conspiracy. The gravel crunched under my tires as I rounded the final bend toward my lake cabin, a place I'd built with my own hands alongside my father before he passed. It was my sanctuary, my escape from a world of noise and chaos. But as I crested the hill, a thick cloud of dust choked the air where my home should have stood. My heart sank. No smoke, just the acrid stench of diesel and freshly turned earth. I floored the accelerator, dread pooling in my gut. What I saw next stopped my breath. A massive yellow excavator, its metal arm frozen mid-swing, sat where my front porch used to be. Half my cabin was gone, reduced to splinters, twisted solar panels, and a pile of rubble that was once the stone chimney Dad and I had laid by hand. And there, standing smugly with a clipboard, was Karen Mitchell, the HOA president, her sharp bob haircut framing a face radiating contempt. "People like you don't belong here," she sneered, thinking I was just some guy she could crush. She had no idea who I was, or that every lie she'd spun was about to unravel into a federal case that would bury her. My name is James Carter, a 52-year-old federal law enforcement agent with 3 decades of experience hunting criminals far more dangerous than Karen Mitchell. I just returned from a 6-week government contract in a classified facility, a grueling stint that left me craving the peace of my cabin on Willow Lake. The cabin wasn't just a house. It was a monument to my father's memory, built board by board, a place where I could still feel the worn deck under my feet and hear the lake's gentle lap. But Karen and her HOA cronies had targeted me, not for code violations, but for who I am, skin color, my existence in their pristine community. They thought they could erase me. They were wrong. The moment Karen uttered those words, something shifted inside me. The shock gave way to a cold, tactical clarity, the kind I'd honed in high-stakes operations. I didn't shout or argue. I pulled out my phone, hit record, and panned from her smug face to the wreckage of my home. Her smirk faltered, just for a second, as confusion flickered in her eyes. She wasn't used to silent defiance. I said nothing about my job or the evidence I was already collecting. First, you let the enemy think they're winning. You let them build their own cage. And I was going to make sure hers was airtight. 6 weeks earlier, I'd left the cabin locked tight, secured with a network of high-definition, motion-activated cameras feeding to an encrypted cloud server. Old habits from my career die hard. I'd asked my neighbor, Tom Grayson, a grizzled retiree with a prosthetic leg and a no-nonsense attitude, to keep an eye out. "Don't let the squirrels claim squatters' rights," I'd joked. He'd grunted, "Got you covered, James." I drove away feeling secure. What could go wrong? As it turned out, everything. The conspiracy started just 48 hours after I left. Karen, with her quiet accomplice, Susan Hayes, the HOA secretary, began weaving a web of lies. A notice appeared on my door for a trash can left out too long a lie, as my cameras later showed the sanitation truck running late, and Karen taping the notice herself hours after pickup. A week later, another notice claimed overgrown weeds, despite my professionally landscaped half-acre. Fines piled up, $50 a day for the trash, $100 for the weeds. But this wasn't about money. It was about building a paper trail to justify theft. The real deception was a letter Karen and Susan sent to the county, claiming my property was abandoned under the name Jacob Curtis, a deliberate typo to make me a ghost in their narrative. They fabricated HOA board meeting minutes, documenting a fake vote to seize my hazardous property. Notices went to a dummy email Karen controlled, ensuring I'd never see them. The final blow was a forged demolition permit, supposedly signed by a retired county inspector, Walter Reed. They'd orchestrated a legal fantasy to destroy my home, all while I was 7,000 miles away running a cyber forensics operation. Back in the present, I didn't return to the rubble. Instead, I checked into a motel, opened my laptop, and let the cold burn of focus take over. Rage is a fire that burns out fast. Preparation is the slow, steady coal that wins. I accessed my cloud server and watched 6 weeks of footage. There was Karen, trespassing to tape and remove notices, ensuring I'd never be notified. There was her enforcer, Mike Dolan, a wannabe security guard in a cheap vest, snapping my shed's lock with bolt cutters. I called Tom, who confirmed seeing Mike skulking around. "Felt wrong," he growled, agreeing to sign a statement. I pulled my property deed, James Carter, no Jacob Curtis. I scoured the HOA bylaws, which required certified mail for serious violations, not taped notices. To lock in the evidence, I mailed myself a sealed envelope with printed screenshots, the deed, and Tom's statement, creating an untamperable chain of custody. Then I called Walter Reed. "I've been retired 6 months," he said, his voice hard. "That permit's a fake. A county database check confirmed the permit number didn't exist. I had them on trespassing, forgery, and fraud. But I needed more proof of Karen's motive, her racism, in her own words. Using a library computer, I became Richard Parker, a retiree eyeing a lot in Willow Lake. I sent an email to the HOA's general inbox, knowing Karen or Susan would see it. I noticed a demolished property at 114 Willow Lake Drive. I wrote, "Abandoned homes concern me. Is the HOA proactive?" The bait was set. 3 days later, Karen replied, "The property was abandoned, a safety issue. Frankly, it's about maintaining community standards. The previous owner wasn't a good fit." It was a confession, cloaked in corporate speak, admitting the demolition was about me, not bylaws. I saved the email headers, tracing her IP address, and sent everything to a trusted colleague, David Brooks, a retired FBI cyber analyst. "This is an arms factory of evidence," he said, confirming its legal weight. The HOA meeting was my battlefield. I arrived early, a thick binder under my arm, and sat in the back of the musty community clubhouse. Karen ran the meeting like a dictator, dismissing complaints about lawn ornaments and parking rules. When she opened the 5-minute public comment period, I stood. "I have something," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. Karen's smile froze. "You're delinquent on fines," she snapped. "You can't speak." I walked to the front, ignoring her. "My name is James Carter. I own 114 Willow Lake Drive." Or I did. I laid out the evidence like a prosecutor. The deed proving my ownership, photos of Karen tampering with notices, the forged permit, and her email admitting the demolition was about standards. The crowd murmured, leaning forward. Then I played the audio from my phone. Karen's voice, clear and venomous, saying, "People like you don't belong here." A gasp rippled through the room. A woman in the back, a local reporter, recorded it all. Karen shouted about slander, but her authority crumbled. The board whispered frantically. Mike Dolan hesitated at the door, cowed by the crowd's glares. I looked at Karen. "You thought I was alone. I'm not." The story exploded. The local news ran the video, and residents called my motel, sharing their own tales of HOA abuse fines for garden gnomes, threats over fallen leaves. The county launched a criminal investigation, and I sent my evidence to a contact in the state attorney general's office. A week later, deputies and investigators stormed an HOA meeting, arresting Karen in handcuffs. Her smugness was gone, replaced by terror. Susan was arrested soon after, spilling everything for a plea deal. Karen faced 4 felony counts: fraud, forgery, trespassing, and housing discrimination. She pleaded guilty to forgery and fraud, getting 6 months in jail and fines. Susan got probation. Mike faced a misdemeanor. The civil suit was swift. The HOA's insurance settled for $216,000 for my cabin and $90,000 for fair housing violations. The HOA teetered on bankruptcy, but the residents chose to rebuild. They elected a new president, a retired accountant named Ellen Harper, and Tom as vice president. New bylaws mandated transparency, third-party inspections, certified mail, recorded meetings. Neighbors apologized for their silence, and I felt the community heal. Rebuilding my cabin became a group effort. Tom brought coffee daily. A former contractor helped frame walls. A woman fined for her gnomes brought lunch. With the settlement, I bought common land and built a community tool shed, stocked with free Tulsa symbol of trust, the opposite of Karen's reign. On the day we finished, Ellen played a resigned board member's apology at the HOA meeting. "We failed this community." Sitting on my new deck, watching the lake glow with sunset, I found peace. You can't stop bad people, but you can build a case, brick by brick, and let the truth win. What do you think about this story? Have you ever faced injustice or abuse of power in your community? Share your thoughts in the comments, especially on how we confront cruelty and rebuild stronger. Your voice matters.